Welcome to Three Thoughts On. Today we continue our series dedicated to book reviews. And I am really happy to do this with my good friend Marco Frio. Marco, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you for this conversation.
Excellent. Well, Marco just published a book called Leadership, Art or Science. I am very proud of you for doing all this work. As well, the audience may not know this, but you and I go way back. We met a long time ago back in Argentina, your home country, and I was not only proud of the work you've done, but also I'm so honored that you asked me to write the foreword for your book. But before we get into the details of the book, which we will, can you give us a little background for the audience on you and who you are and what led you to this path of writing this book?
Oh, certainly. Well, again, thank you for having me to share my experience and thoughts on this book. I don't think I have all the experience to write a book, but nonetheless, my experience led me to scrutinize failures and successes, right? And with that in mind, I started compiling things that they work and they didn't work. So I started my career in Argentina, as you mentioned, in cellular networks. And my work, similar to yours, led me to travel and being through multiple countries and experience the different leadership from different cultures, backgrounds, and and in some cases experience great successes as much as fantastic failures. So that evolution took me to start thinking what do we need to have or what do we need to develop to be successful, and the difference between leadership and management. And that's what I learned, that a lead to be a leader, you don't need to be a manager. So leadership is not a position of power or position, but quite the opposite. You can be a leader, and we have the discussion multiple times. You can be a leader in your family. You can be a leader in your church. Uh, Naturally, it's easier to see a leader when he is in a position of authority, but it's not necessarily connected. So, with that in mind, I start inquiring, oh, what is it to be a leader then if you don't need authority to to administer a leadership. And that led me to start poking around different figures. I mean, you can think of Elon Musk, whether you agree or disagree with his views, uh, and great presidents per se, regardless of political parties, they're presidents that transform a country. And I said all the time, you can get to be a president, but it's harder to become a great president if you're not a leader, because now you need to lead elements you don't control. So that led me to digest multiple areas, from communication, how to motivate people, how to analyze body language, how to be able to listen the unspoken words of disagreement, and that's a lot. And the principal area, which is communication. I think that we have a big issue in communication nowadays, and that creates a lot of problems in companies.
Thank you for that background. Yeah, you've I've been taking notes as you've been talking because there's a couple of things I want to jump right into that are right in the heart of the message that you have in your book. But I think it's important to note that this is you brought up something right off the bat, which I think it's worth mentioning again. You're writing a book about leadership. You're questioning yourself whether it's an art or a science, and as you read the book, you go through that thought process yourself. But you're an engineer. You're a couple of years younger than I am, but you have a very similar background. You telecommunications worldwide. You were with Motorola. You were with Ericsson. You were with so many different companies like myself. You're also an officer in the Navy. That gives you visibility from a different point of view. It's not a corporate environment. It's not a profit and loss center, but it's a safety. It's a security of the country and so forth here in the United States. Um, and I love what you said. It's like, well, maybe I haven't been enough of a leader to write a book like this, but I've certainly been under many, many leaders in my career, and I've been able to observe what has worked and what hasn't worked. And from that point of view, as a follower, I do have something to say about leadership. And I like that a lot because I think we sometimes put ourselves down. It's like, well, I don't have that experience. Well, maybe you don't have it directly, but certainly have it indirectly. Between the two of us, we've had a couple of dozen leaders that we followed along the way in our careers. And some of them have been great, some of them have been okay, and some of them have not been very good at all. And I think that's a good starting point for an objective discussion of what leadership is. So thank you for bringing that up, um, because I think that sets the stage for people who may question and say, well, what makes you adept to write on such a topic, right? Well, if you're paying attention, uh, at some point you're either leading or you're following.
That's
And if you
correct.
pay attention, you can you can critique it in an objective and respectful way, one way or another, right?
That's right. And one thing that I heard recently from Simon Sinek is that the great leaders are the one that they're constantly studying leadership. So you don't need to be an expert. As a matter of fact, you will never to be an expert because you constantly raising the bar. So the minute that you think that you made it is when you're gonna create problems in your organization because you think you have enough elements and you're learning your education stop. So from that perspective, uh, you always leading, and there is a misconception which I don't address it completely in the book, probably for the second version of it, is that leadership is not top down. So leadership is middle up, middle down, middle left, middle right. So and you need to adapt your leadership independent if you're going up, down, left, or right. So there is certain language, motivation, and skills to leading people to follow you, which it takes similar skills but different approach. If you lead in your boss, how do you tell your boss what to do? And people got the misconception that you cannot lead up the chain of command, which you could and you should, as a matter of fact, as a part contributing in this machine per se. So with that in mind, uh, I hone in the book in about three key items that leadership of follower needs to adhere and promote every time. One is clarity. So there is a misconception that a leader is the person who knows it all. And I will argue that a leader needs to be humble and needs to, and more than likely will be leading much more smart individual than he is. And he needs to be humble enough to be able to get everybody in line and make sure we all achieve the deadlines and get attack and conquer the objectives. The other item that a good leader needs to be able to master is to know himself. And not for a chance, I the chapter 2 of the book, it goes directly to understanding yourself as a leader. There are biases that might blind you, and there are a little bit of self-awareness, cognitive awareness that you need to have in the environment that you're working on to make an effective leader. But more importantly, and this is something that I heard the other day, when you define yourself as a leader, the easiest way is not define what you are, define what you're not. And that's where people fail because they try to say what they are and they more than likely say it wrong, phrase it wrong, or execute wrong what they think they are. So you should start saying what you are not. And then when you box yourself in the corner, you realize what you are. Now it comes the eureka moment, right? The Jesus moment. Oh, that's the person that I am. That's the leader that I am. So now you kind of start addressing with the self-reflection, self-improvement, and I love in page 51. I start with how do you transform your leadership once you realize what you are. So how do you lead from within? How you the rebirth, the re-engineering of yourself to becoming that transformative and effective leader that you want to be.
I think that that's very essential, and I think what I like to do here is to kind of let me throw something at you and see if you agree, partially disagree, and see if you can expand on this, right? Because it seemed to me that when I read the book, and there's a lot of books about leadership out there
Yeah,
today,
that's right.
because we as a society recognize that, especially in these times, we need to do better as a collective. We need to do a better job of bringing people together instead of falling into the tribalism that we seem to be falling into. That's not just as a society, but even within
Mhm.
corporations. You see that. You see that within the family. You see that within the community. It's not a political conversation. It is really a social problem that we're seeing, right? So when I read the book, two things came out that seem to be. I can't say that it's a first. It's a first of its kind because I haven't read every single leadership book that's out there, right? So I know I've read a few, but
Let's
not
be honest.
not all of them, right? Yeah, but it seemed unique to me that you took two sides of the problem. One is what you just said is understanding yourself, is doing that self observation of who you are, or who do you see yourself as a leader, but then also doing the observation of the environment around you. You talked about motivation, you talked about observing body language of others, you talked about looking at how people agree or disagree, you're talking about the communication style. So there's this dichotomy of, I need to not only observe myself constantly, but I also need to be observing others. And in observing is observation is something that requires a lot of
That's
patience,
right.
because you can't just react to what's being observed. You have to observe, you have to process, you have to come to some conclusions, and then take some sort of action. So
That's
it
right.
seemed to me that from your point of view, these two are very, not only very much intertwined, but they cannot be separated if you are to become an effective leader. Can you comment on that?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I will agree and I will go beyond is that you said the patient when you observe yourself. I will say that patience is the key element, but consistency is the other one. So you need to do this self evaluation constantly and seek feedback from three different levels. And I like always to have three different levels. One is more a professor, more fundamentalist, if you wish, type of a school teacher that will tell you, you shall do this. That's the first feedback. The second is a peer feedback for two reasons. The peer feedback is the one that brings that exaggerated, depending on the agenda of your peers. Some will compete against you, some admire you, some don't care. So each mentality will bring a perspective to it. It's like looking at a cartoon. You know, when you go to those carnivals and they do a cartoon, they highlight areas that you don't see in yourself. And if you have kids, you will see that. You caught your kid saying things, and where did he get that from you? So sometimes getting the middle feedback from your peers is also bringing a good perspective. And the third is from people that is following you. And the reason behind it is because you got two kinds. You got the kind that really loves you to death, so that's all the flowers, and it's nice to get the flower, not to get self reassurance, but at least you know the areas you're doing well. But also like to do the ones that don't like you, because not to go running like a reactive. Oh, I need to fix this, but it's just to see what is broken, what motivates this person to be against my leadership style. Maybe it's one of the biases that I haven't addressed it, and I don't know I have it. So it's one. I think the key of success is being able to constantly looking at the mirror, and this self this constant evaluation serves. In the book, I like to refer to a good leader is effortless endeavor. When you do it right, it feels like you're not doing anything, which is a little bit of a contradicting, because you might think, well, nothing is happening. You might think you're a good leader. So leadership is like balancing a 2-ton rock upside down. When you have something in equilibrium, to put it back, it takes less efforts. If you ride a motorcycle, you will know that huge motorcycles, skinny guy like me can balance that out with minimal effort. But if it tilts certain to a certain degree, you need massive efforts to put it back in equilibrium. That is in a nutshell when a leadership is well executed. Like few movements create great balances.
I like that analogy of the motorcycle because it is true. People who have experience riding a bike know that if you're doing things right, it's going to stay up, and it's not going to require a lot of effort from you to keep it up and keep it riding straight. But if you fall, it's a lot of work to pick it back up, especially a bigger bike, right? So it's important to note that this is not what you're saying here. Is not that it doesn't take work.
That's right.
It's just
That's right. And reading the room is, I think, one of the biggest assets any leadership can have. A nod, a sight, a rolling eyes, things that are unsaid that you need to address it. And now, how you address it is the art, right? The art of the all these science. So, do you address it in public? Do you take it outside? Do you say, "Hey, let's have a coffee"? Do you ask for lunch? So, and that's how the art comes to how do I make this balance using all my science, stay in equilibrium. And those are great leaders, right? So, empowering anybody beneath you to use their skills in a magic symphony of equilibrium and self sustaining momentum.
excellent. One of the things that you touched up on the book, I think it's chapter 4, if I'm not mistaken, you talk about leading through change.
Oh,
And to me that was an interesting chapter because again, both you and I, we have spent and continue to spend a significant amount of time in corporate America. And corporate America has this very legacy way of thinking. Even corporations, even companies who see themselves as innovative, nimble companies still have this mentality of if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Which means basically we're not really willing to make a lot of changes. right?
That's right.
We are just going to keep doing things because they keep working. And then the world around continues to change because the only constant is change. And organizations, and then therefore the people within those organizations, um, pay the price when organizations choose to not change. And it seems that you're arguing that in order for leadership to take place in a positive way, change must be embraced. Am I saying that right?
And yes, yes and no. Let me put it this way. The first part you said, I'm 100% uh, uh, in agreement with you. And if you move this to the realm of a military environment, it's even worse. It's a big elephant. It doesn't turn in corners. It doesn't speed up like a motorcycle. So, how do you move a big elephant when you are in a race, right? So it's really complicated to race a horse with an elephant. It's not you're not going to end up winning. So how do you do that? How do you embrace change to in your favor, and how do you embrace change in an organization which is static with uh, years and years of "don't fix what ain't broken" was the theme. So how do you bring it back? And then you can see that uh, very successful companies are disruptive. They do understand the change. But more important, let me put it this way: uh, if you don't realize that management is a people business, you are in the wrong business. So I don't care what business you're in, if you're in technology, medical field, military organizations, or political organizations. I don't care where you are. Things are working because of people doing their job. So this is a people business. If you think there is a you're not selling because your equipment is not that don't have the features, then you probably got half of the picture right. The whole half is wrong. With that in mind, you got to understand that change not only happens outside, happen inside an organization. So you have different type of personalities, cultures, age gaps, and not everybody adapt to change in the same way. So therefore, some managers or leaders um, are a little bit hesitant to introduce change because of the disruption that that will create in their organizations. You got to be able to embrace the change. You got to be able to welcome change. I heard a phrase that the only thing I know is not going to change is change. So it's the only thing that will be perennial and it will never stop or cease to exist. So just embrace it. And I talk about techniques, how to identify these changes, how to embrace the changes. And one of the things that I hone in is the excitement that those new capabilities bring to the team. I don't talk about how an iPhone is great. I don't talk about how these new computer systems will sell more. I talk about how these new conquer, new technologies, new features bring excitement to the team. Because I do believe excitement is the fuel, is the currency. It's what it makes things happen. A team will run faster when it's excited, when they know that it's impactful, and all that you have the I will say is your role is demanded upon you to be able to bring that back to the team. If you're not doing that, if you make it as mundane as possible, certainly you're eroding, you're depleting that energy out of the team, and you're not going to get those groundbreaking, fun, and exciting solutions that you claim that your team is capable to produce.